All right. All righty. Well, good morning, or afternoon. Sorry, everybody. It is 2 o'clock on the 22nd of January, 2026. This is the Legislative uh, Building Code Council Legislative Committee. We'll start out with roll call, please.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Todd Barrowthrough,
Here.
Jay Arnold. I see you on there. I'll come back. Tom Young. Oh, not here.
Tom Young here.
Thank you. Roger Haringa. Not seeing online. Chell Anderson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ben Umra.
Here.
Thank you. Angela Haupt.
Looks like she's trying to connect to audio.
Yeah. Recognize that she is online, but doesn't have the audio at the moment. And then Representative Alex Fromell. I'm not seeing him online today.
All right. Is there anybody from the public that would like to be recognized? Patrick? It'll take a sec to flip you over here. So it'll be Patrick, Elizabeth, Matthew, and Tim.
Awesome. Thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Good afternoon.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas.
And Matthew Friedlander with Renew Air in Madison, Wisconsin. We manufacture energy recovery ventilators, and I'm just trying to follow along a little bit. And your weather sounds pretty nice to me.
Yeah, I lived in Old Mad Town for a little while.
Okay.
So, yeah, well, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Next is to review and approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is to review and approve the minutes from the 15th. The crazy meeting.
And that is the end.
Look for a motion on that.
Motion to approve as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes as written. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Legislative update week 3. We were in the midst of.
All right. So since we just met yesterday, we went over the everything that was on from last week, and then as we get into today, I had the opportunity to review several more bills, and changes to this sheet are highlighted in yellow. Let's see. Oh, I have one more hand up in the attendees. It looks like
Yeah, that's
Matthew.
Matthew. Matthew, do you have anything more, or you just got your hands still up? Okay, that's
Cool.
what I thought.
I'll just leave the permissions there for now. All right. So first change to this sheet. There was a engrossed substitute bill for 5552 introduced, and it was passed on the Senate floor yesterday. And so the a change on this one was a effective, not an effective date, but a date to conduct a rulemaking of March 31st of 2027, which is, not in alignment with our code cycles as a whole, but with the housing crisis in full swing for us, that would, and the delays we're experiencing, we could potentially bring a rules for kit homes to bear at the implementation of the 2024 codes. It's something that I'm still exploring as far as what that looks like for us. But this one had the amendment dropped and passed before we had a chance to really engage on that one. And so that one's moving towards the House committees. Since there was a change introduced, it does have to be approved by the House as well. And so pause there for discussion on this particular bill.
Yeah, Todd?
So this is the one that I was asking questions about yesterday, if you remember, um, because we were debating where it sits in the House rules, Senate rules. I didn't realize it was already on the floor and that was going through. So we knew about this last year. If anyone doesn't remember, it's up to 800 square feet. So I guess the question is how I was giving my opinion earlier to Dustin. I feel like we could do that this year. I don't think I don't think we should be signaling that we can't take it on, especially with the the delay in the code. So I just kind of curious what people are thinking, and we can bring it forward to the council tomorrow if we need to.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm just reading the bill for the first time. I've seen kit home bills in the past. Could someone summarize what this? It looks like we just do rulemaking on kit homes. Is that the substance of the bill? Or is there other things we're supposed to do about that type and size of a home?
Would say that this one is asking us to do just general rulemakings on kit homes to make them available for use.
Okay, thanks. And I guess I would, given the state of the code right now and the codes and the challenge we've had in getting them done, I don't know if engaging in a new rulemaking starting in a month and getting it into the 2024 codes is a good idea. I don't initially think it's a good idea, but I guess I could be convinced. It seems like we're trying to get printed books, which means we need to have everything done in advance of probably May 2027, well in advance to get printed books. And I guess I don't see engaging in additional rulemaking being a realistic possibility at this time, but I'm interested in what others think about that.
Todd?
I think this is off cycle. This would be a legislative mandate. So it doesn't concern me as much. I definitely don't feel the state building council should signal that we have to wait 3 years on this. There's, the senator has been very direct, and if you've seen him present on this, he wants something to move, and would like the building code council to engage. Prefabrication. So it says kit homes may be any structures intended for residential use that are comprised of prefabricated walls, floors, and roofs, which are assembled on site and are 800 square feet or smaller in size. We're kind of getting ahead of this already with the amendment for the prefabrication standards, in my opinion. If the tags, recommend those to the council and the council accepts those, that's a partial step because now we have the ability to do, reference something for assemblies, for certification of assemblies. And then for those of you who are tracking, in the IBC, we just concluded a meeting for the last hour talking about emergency shelters, which, is a similar kind of line of, so there'll be an appendix in the IBC for emergency shelters, and it gets into these prefabricated cabins and things like that. So I kind of feel like we're starting to go into this space already. So I'm willing. Maybe the IBC tag is the one to keep running with it if that were the case, but also look to Angela on your opinion of the IRC.
We'll wait for Angela to respond quick, Joe.
Sorry, had to find my mute button. I guess the first question is, what does perform rulemaking mean? Does that mean that we have to be complete? Does that mean that you have to start by then? That would be my question, because if it means be complete, then again, I'm with Chell on we're already way past the capacity to do that. If it means start by then yes, I think this could fit into the 27 rulemaking sort of process with those tags already. But again, it's one of those phrases that I'm not sure what the interpretation or meaning behind it is.
Looking at it, it seems like the intent is to get on it. Because the first sentence here in the bill talks about, the introductory housing prices have become unaffordable. And seems to be a major mover in the legislature this
That seems to
session to
be
get
the
things going.
introduction to every bill that they've put forward, is
Yeah.
that's the excuse. So yeah.
Yeah, Chal?
Yeah, I see that a lot of people are doing ADUs, and ADUs tend to be under 800 square feet, and I think it's great to have prefabricated options for those. I agree with the intent of it. The first home I bought was 710 square feet, and it was the only thing that I could afford at the time. And then several years later, we added on to that because we had one bedroom. But that's a home that nobody builds today, is the 800 and less square foot home, except for it as an ADU. So I'm sympathetic to it. I just don't think we would have it out by the implementation date of the 2024 codes. If it's for a different time, I think that might be possible, and I'd leave it up to staff and to figure out, and whoever is going to try and imagine the next code cycle and how we get through that, keeping dates and keeping times and keeping staff busy, but not too busy. I think it probably could fit into that and not be implemented on May 2024. But I think if we try and hold that date, we're just going to exacerbate all the problems we have right now. So I would be against trying to do that. So I'd like to hear if there is a clear date in the bill about that. I'm also looking at how we had structured the codes, and right now we have exceptions for under 400 square feet for tiny homes, and then we would have apparently a new set of codes for homes under 800 square feet, and then we would have, or kid homes under 800 square feet. I just want to be clear about how many different designations for homes we have, because we're also going to have the single exit and the multiplex housing. And if we give everybody too many options, building officials will struggle to implement all those options, and builders will also have to struggle through every single one of those options. So let's attempt to be clear about how many pathways through the code that we think is right. This adds another pathway through the code. I don't know if there's other bills trying to get other pathways through the code, but there's the bill that we've talked about that would do a performance-based code for multifamily under 24 units, under 6 stories. And it's like, if we create 500 pathways through the code, it will just be a lot of a hot mess for everybody. So let's hope the legislature is clear about a reasonably limited number of pathways to the code. That's my main comment.
Okay.
Two comments. One is that this passed the Senate unanimously, so there's clearly momentum around this, and we need to be, as it goes back around to the House, be very specific with the chair of the House Local Government Committee on what our ask is. And my suggestion would be that we pick a date that we're more confident in. Maybe if it can't be done by March, could it be done by June 2027, and have that be our ask?
So our chair lost internet connection, and so could we maybe have a volunteer and then have a motion for a chair pro tem?
I'm happy to do it if,
I'll nominate Todd.
thanks.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Angela, why don't you go first and then I'll recognize myself.
No, sorry. I mean, I was just gonna say, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, it's kit homes. It's basically the ones you order off of Amazon, you do whatever. The big challenge with these is always going to be the energy code because they're not going to meet it. And so, I mean, I don't have a problem doing this code language as, say, like another appendix, something like that. My only concern is again the tight deadline and trying to fit it in with everything else. And I know we're always going to have these legislative mandates because evidently we can accomplish any number of things. But I think the date we need to work on, we need to discuss and agree on that as far as a realistic goal for getting it across the finish line, because with this we still have to deal with public comment hearings and everything, right? So I mean, we do have to remember to build those times into this. And I guess I'd like to hear from staff as far as what amount of time it would take if we started this, obviously during this year, to get the tag sort of legwork out of the way. Is that going to hinder their regular process on the full codes that we need to get across the finish line on a drop dead date?
So I'm as far as staff expenditure on the time there, it will take some additional effort there. And it is my hope that after we can get past our final adoption, that we can really dedicate some time towards planning the 2027 code cycle. So in our analysis on this one from last year, we haven't updated any fiscal notes on this at this point. But we did indicate there was some cost for this bill to pass. And so you know, when we're talking about the staff need here, we indicated that we would need a one whole FTE to address this one. And so the issue being that, a code specialist for the SBCC hasn't been a terribly attractive position for a lot of folks to come apply to. So over my time here, we've had a code specialist position open for quite a bit of time, and candidates that come in are not well suited to take on that role. And then also the need to bring them up to speed in the rulemaking process from the typical applicants we get. I know when I started, it was a shift in gears for sure to go from code enforcement to building code council work and really have to study the APA and the RFA and all of the RCW to get in there. So, if we can get a person in here to do it, we can hopefully keep the existing staff tasked towards moving the 2024 codes towards that final goal of having the custom codes. My thought is if we were to embark on this rulemaking upon passage, that we wouldn't get the benefit of having any content available in the printed editions of the code because we wouldn't get this work done in time to have available in the proofs. That being said, anything that is developed after those printings are made is available to be dropped into the online versions. And, the digital codes are being used more and more as time progresses and people are getting away from the paper books. But there's plenty of people out there that love the paper books too. So, it would depend on candidates coming in. If we weren't able to bring anybody on, but we had the money, we would have to pivot some resource towards this, and then, looking at I'm not super well versed in the topic of what needs to come to bear for the kit homes. We've made some steps towards performance codes and things like that, so we could have some, metrics, baby steps already taken, but they're not, putting us further down, miles down the road on this one. So it would
Justin?
be, yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to interject because I think we're overcomplicating this quite a bit. But I have met directly with the senator on this one, and Dustin, you've been in one of those meetings. I just want to clarify for everyone, this is a prefabrication request. This is about bringing pre-certified assemblies, I imagine, in code reports into the code, finding a pathway. So I can very clearly state my understanding of the senator's frustration here, which I'm very sympathetic to because he was asking for this last year and it got hung up and so didn't complete the cycle. And if we come back and say 3 years, then we're not responsive, in my opinion. And because this is the only mechanism right now in the state. So now it's going to be, if we don't deliver on this, it's going to be a question of, is this the right mechanism? Labor and industry is signaling that they don't have the authority to do assembly certification. So this is we're stuck in this gap. It's very similar to even the performance-based bill is saying we need some pathway to have third-party certification come in and give some certification in a code report or something on a closed panel assembly. That's the gap. That's all this is asking, in my opinion. It's not asking us to write a new code. We can reference that it has to be per the IRC or IBC, these assemblies. This is simply allowing then third parties, so then the jurisdictions can still accept them. If someone sees it different, that's fine. But we just had this conversation. It would actually help the emergency shelters effort because, for example, that's at a much smaller scale, a different risk level. We have Aaron Scott, is that right? Who's representing, say, pallet shelters as an example. These are not pallet shelters. This is taking it up to 800 square feet, but they have to go in and certify their assemblies because that is a kit. That is essentially a kit shelter. And they can't do it through labor and industry because it's a kit. It's not a six-sided box. They assemble it on site under the codes. So they're rated, they have certification and so forth. So I see those as very similar efforts. This is just bigger. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Thanks, Todd. And I guess, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but this asks us to touch every code.
Why can't you design to a code? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but why can't you design to a code, to IRC, to IBC?
Well, if the intent of this bill is say design a kit home to meet the IRC, I don't see why our kit home couldn't do that today. I guess I don't understand why a kit home couldn't do that today.
You can't certify closed assemblies, except for the inspection is the problem. Labor and industry doesn't inspect and certify the assemblies.
You mean before they're installed?
Right. You have this constant tension between, bringing the jurisdiction into the factory or having something prefabricated and certified. Now, maybe I'm misreading and misunderstanding this. You can still design to the code.
Yeah, okay. I've looked at prefab before, and we've looked at prefab, and what you're saying is if you do a wall and it's prefabricated, someone has to check whether there's insulation in there. And you can't do that on site because it's all enclosed.
Yep. It's the open versus closed wall.
So it's more of a inspection issue than but are you also saying that someone is certifying it that's not the AHJ?
someone is inspecting and auditing, and then it's to the still to the jurisdiction acceptance, but it's to a repeatable product. So, and Angela,
Okay.
go ahead and jump in, but Jill, I defer to you.
And Mike
Yeah,
is too.
I have a few more questions. One is, so when a bill has a fiscal note, does that mean if it passes, the State Building Code Council automatically gets the money in the fiscal note through the appropriations process, or how's the Building Code Council get the money through the fiscal note?
I don't believe it's automatic, but that is the hope, yes.
Okay, so they would, if you say it's going to cost us X dollars, then the Building Code Council would get X dollars in the legislature through appropriations. Okay. And then I guess to the point of, okay, it takes more time to do this. We need staff. We can't hire that staff because we're not paying enough money to get the right person. I mean, in the private industry, if you can't hire someone, you need to offer more money. And then you can hire someone because at a certain price you can hire someone. So I guess is the legislature then going to increase the salary of people so that the Building Code Council can hire someone to do this? Because if we can't hire someone at the current salary, obviously, putting more work on their plate doesn't mean that we can hire someone at that salary. Does the legislature have the authority then to increase the salary for code specialists or something like that?
Are they represented, Dustin? Anybody in your office represented?
No.
Okay.
Because it seems like if we can't hire someone, then that's a challenge that the legislature needs to deal with if that's in their purview. If it's not in their purview, then they need to find a way to, give us the resources to do what they tell us to do. And that's, pretty simple request, but maybe somebody has to do some research on that. And then I was wondering, like, if they want this done really quickly, can they exempt us from the OPA or other things? Because we have a process that the legislature's told us to do. And if they're telling us to do this really quickly, are they going to try and exempt us from things that we otherwise might need to be? I don't think that's a good idea. But if they want this done quickly, then how are they enabling that speed? Are there things at the legislature that will enable that speed? And then lastly, who would certify this and how would the jurisdictions feel about that? So those are my questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Micah.
Thanks. I appreciate the time. I kind of going to what Todd said, you're indicating third-party certification of these, but I don't see any of that in this bill if we're still talking about 5552 on the screen. It says the State Building Code Council shall make the rules to allow it to be out of the building code. Third-party certification is already allowed, I believe, by a registered design professional. In this instance, I guess what you're asking is almost like a special inspector after the fact. That's what I'm hearing. Again, I'm not opposed to this bill, but what's the difference between this 800 square foot structure that has a different method of construction than any other 800 square foot structure, where if you come in with an alternate means and methods, you just get that approved through the code official and certified by the design professional with that approval. So I don't see anything different here, and I'm not sure why this is even necessary if all it is third party on a different design process, which is already allowed in both the building code and the residential code. Thanks.
Go ahead, Todd.
Well, please, correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, it's taking what we talked about this yesterday on performance base. It's allowing what we would do in alternative materials design and methods, and we're allowing this pre-certification of an assembly now, which is instead of one project by project, we're able to do a kit and get that certified and then get that into acceptance in a jurisdiction. So I don't see us as rewriting a whole new code, but maybe I'm interpreting different than others.
I guess that's my question. We can already do this. It can already be done. So that's why I'm asking what the legislation's even for.
Right, but yes, we're saying similar things, right, Micah?
Correct. And I apologize, I missed yesterday's meeting. You and I've already talked about the performance bill, and yes, you and I have come to the same conclusion that you could do the performance approach now. You're just putting in kind of a prescriptive path or wanting to. So this is the same thing. This is just saying we need to create rules, but rules already exist. Maybe this is indicating you want special rules, and that's maybe the push here. But again, if we're talking about performance, nothing in this bill talks about performance, and performance is already a path that's allowed. Thanks.
Yep. Sorry, Chair, may I?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. No, this is not about performance-based design. This is about the prefabricated assemblies, in my opinion. So find a pathway that eases that so that someone can design and have certainty if they're going to go through the testing, the design, the testing, and so forth, that it is as prepackaged as possible, and there's a clean path for a closed assembly.
Yeah, go ahead, Angela. And then I have a question for Todd too.
Okay, so we're talking about totally closed wall. So we're talking electrical, insulation, everything. So how do we accept out of state assemblies when the state doesn't allow electrical inspection by anyone that doesn't have a Washington electrical license?
I can give a quick answer if that's all right, Chair.
Mhm.
In prefabrication, electrical is almost always still pulled on site. So usually you have some sort of tether or some sort of, and then so that's almost always still pulled on site.
So that would just be a requirement that it
Mhm.
couldn't actually be a fully comprised wall or anything. It would have to still be able to have the conduits and stuff in it, but then no actual wires would have to be pulled.
Yep. Yeah. But if typical tricks, if there's not actual raceway conduit, it's literally pulling like a webbing and it's all in between like a plastic layer and so forth, and you pull that on, the electrician pulls it on site. So that is the one exception usually that is not part of a fully closed wall.
Okay, so there'd be plumbing, everything else already in there.
If anyone knows how to crack that nut, you'd be the first. No.
I'm just saying, I think plumbing requires a special plumbing, Washington plumbing license also specifically to do that. So again, we'd be making it difficult, but yeah. All right. It is what it is.
So Todd, I do have a question too. Who is in charge of accountability then to make sure that these prefab things are actually built to spec?
Yeah. In the state of Washington, this is very similar to the conversation that the performance code, just because that's also asking for that that jurisdiction to have a prepackaged code report. So I mean, you'd have a third-party agency come in. It's very important, in my opinion. We're already taking the first steps by asking the IRC tag to consider an amendment for the ICC MBI 1200, 1205, 1210. Those are standards that were developed to help on the design side and on the building official on the enforcement side. And then I hope I have this right. 1210, I think, is on the MEP. It starts to give the standards on how you do this prefabrication. So it's in a code report, but in the state of Washington, to my understanding, and this is what we want, the jurisdiction still has to make has the final authority. This isn't preempting the jurisdiction, in my opinion.
Okay, thanks. Jay?
From previous discussions, is there any role for L&I here? Because I believe for other classes of prefab, they were the certifying authority that said the design was approved and the manufacturing was to that design.
If I may, Chair.
Oh, of course.
That's how the senator got to us. And we can't speak for L&I. We can invite them, but they've been signaling pretty clearly this year. It is outside their authority, and they don't have the capacity to start to move into assemblies. They are authorized for modular six-sided boxes. And if anyone else kind of knows differently, that's the line. So the senator started there, was given that feedback, and realized the only pathway, just like pallet shelters, have to come through the code and through the jurisdiction. L&I is not a pathway to my understanding.
And so L and I wouldn't even be looking at the individual six sides.
If it was a six-sided closed box, a module that they could put a gold seal on, my understanding is yes. But they do the plan review, they do the inspection. This is different. This is saying a site assembled kit.
Got it.
Like the old Sears Roebuck's houses. Those are old enough. Micah?
Thanks again, Chair. I guess try to simplify, Todd. I believe is what these are going for and other, I want to say the performance bill as well, is looking at standardizing in alternate means and methods that would, some hearing you say, may still somewhat rely on the authority of the AHJ, but may not. If it's standardized, I think the intent is that they have to accept it. But that's what I'm hearing is this is just standardizing, formalizing alternate means and methods. Again, process is already allowed, but now we're going to put that in a prescriptive rule.
Go ahead, Tuck.
Yeah, I think some people may want that. I don't know the pathway in the state of Washington to have a state authority beyond, unless the legislature gives. I mean, it's clearly not the state building code council. That's not our role to review and enforce. L&I has some of that authority to review and enforce when it's a six-sided box. No one, my understanding is this is the dilemma. No one has the authority statewide to do that on assemblies. We can get it, like I like to use, maybe it's a bad analogy. I like to say we're taking the effort with the jurisdiction from the 40-yard line in the Hail Mary to the 1-yard line, locking arms together and moving it across the goal line. To me, it's getting it closer to permit acceptance.
Go ahead, Micah.
That sounds good to me. I don't think we're far off, Todd, on what this is going for. I don't think the bill's necessary. It's already allowed. I mean, if somebody came to a jurisdiction, a registered design professional today I'm sure folks have seen those zip kit homes. They're pretty much palletized structures, not modules, and they lift them by crane and set them in a few days. A registered design professional will provide that, and a jurisdiction will sign off on it without any special rules. So that aren't already covered in the code. Anyway, thanks for the discussion. I don't think this bill is horrible, but the rules are going to be odd to develop. I agree with Chael on this too. When you get into energy code, mechanical, even plumbing, you mentioned some I standards. We do the UPC, so it's fun, but I think it can be done.
So it kind of seems like the biggest issue right now is whether or not we can get it done within the time that we're assuming they're prescribing here, which is during this next current code cycle. I guess it's current now. And whether or not there's any leeway there, should we come into some snags and not able to finish it. If that's the case, and I'll get to you in just a sec, Chel, if that is kind of the concern here primarily, being able to get it done and or getting the people on board to help and or all of the other variables, that maybe we bring this to the council and ask if, they think that we should advise on this, that we can get started on it, but perhaps might not get it done for various reasons. Does that sound like a course of action? Chel?
Yeah, that's where I was going, Tom, as
Okay.
well, is, I think the codes are likely to be enforced next year on May 1, 2027. which is not a far cry from what they have, but that might be a reasonable, might be a date that would just be better to have in law rather than March 31, 2027. That's a semi-random date. From what I know about fiscal note is the Building Code Council would get the money probably in July or August. And so then we'd start rulemaking, hire a staff or do whatever we need to do then. We have a lot of codes to go through before then as well. So then if we did that in July or August, then just starting the clock and imagining, you have a couple months, followed by a couple months, followed by a couple months. Maybe we could get it done by May 1. I don't know. I'd at a minimum suggest May 1 instead of March 31. But I guess, I'd love to hear from staff what seems more reasonable. I think they want aggressive, but I think we also want, we don't want to not comment on a statute that would make us do something we don't think we can do. So I'd say, May 1 at a minimum, but if staff thinks, June or July or August is a much more reasonable target, then, we should make that comment, or we should suggest that comment be made.
Yeah, Dustin, do you have any feedback on that?
As I looked at these last session, the feedback I was trying to give was trying to get all this aligned within our code cycle so that it impacts staff the least. And seeing this date and knowing where we are in the rulemaking, there is impact to the staff exposure on this one. And, I don't want to say that staff can't do it, but, fully realizing that we are behind the ball with our 2024 process and have a steep hill to climb. I hesitate to say that it's a guaranteed, dunk by March 31st, much less May. But it's really, difficult to guesstimate exactly what our staff time is going to need to be as we approach these timelines. We could get this started right upon passage. Yes, we might not get the monies for it until a little bit later in the year, but I think if this passes, we shouldn't wait for the money to hit our account to start it because we'll be even further behind on that one. So I think that there's room for this to get done in the timeframes that they're asking for here, but it is a lift.
Well, what does somebody think? In order to discuss this and advise, we'll need council support on it. Maybe we should have a motion to that effect that we bring this up and ask for some flexibility in the due date on this, so that there is that little bit of leeway for the unknowns and the time crunches and the lack of staff and so on and so forth. Todd?
Yeah, I've stated my opinion. I think this can be done this year before next session, and because when you understand the intent with the senator, it's not asking for compromising in the life safety considerations of the codes. I think it could be debated whether they're asking for some relief from the energy codes, and that could be it's not explicitly said here, but I've heard it over testimony. So we want to clarify on that, but I don't see it as a heavy lift. This is creating a pathway, a cleaner pathway for kit parts.
Okay, we'll go Chell then, Micah.
Hey, you say, Todd, that you understand the intent from the senator, but this intent is not at all in the bill. So we can't take something a senator suggested as the law we need to follow. We take the law, and the law says nothing, really very little actually, about other than we're going to create some rulemaking. So when you say, I talked to the senator on this, and the way the senator frames it, this should be easy. It's like, well, but the bill doesn't say anything about that. So, I don't think we need, ultimate clarity in the bill, but at some point, it's not what the senator says, it's what the bill says. And, that's what ultimately we're going to be judged against and what we're going to attempt to, follow what the bill says. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Todd, if you got a reaction to that.
Yeah. I guess I would counter that we do ask for legislative intent for clarification. So once a bill is passed, we do ask for legislative intent from often the sponsor, just like on the single X and so forth. And I think that is valid to do that. The alternative would be that the too much is put into statute and overly specified and not given enough freedom to the rulemaking process. So we have to balance that. We have to demonstrate this process works. We have to demonstrate that we're reactive. And so, and I would finally make a point. I think we can decide today. I don't know that, like a date necessarily needs to be a full council action. I think that we just need to advise the staff and help them to inform this, because it's DES informing the legislature and SBC informing the legislature on the technical part and the administrative part.
If I'm allowed to respond.
Sure.
I mean, when we've asked legislators before what the bill intent was, they've said, well, 50 people voted for it. We have 50 different reasons to vote for it. So, from talking to Representative Ramel and others, they've hesitated at the most to say that there was a single intent behind a bill. So, I mean, look, this doesn't say what we're supposed to do or not do. It just says we're supposed to engage in rulemaking. So, I would probably accept your suggestion that it's, potentially minimal, but the bill doesn't say that. So, ultimately, we're supposed to follow the law and not what we think the law might have meant during its passage. I mean, we can look back at that, but I think it's a challenging thing. And then I also agree with you that I don't know that this needs to go to the council. I think this is one of those, things where Dustin can go to the sponsor and say, we think March 31st is not the right date. Another day might be better further in the future, just to make sure that we, Building Code Council, can comply with the law. I feel like that's a fine thing to do. And that's what's done on a lot of bills, right? Is staff just communicates with the legislature about technical content of the bills.
Well, I was kind of wondering, I mean, we've always kind of said that in order to interact with the sponsors on a bill, that we would either need to be asked for it or have the approval of council to advise on certain things. I mean, it's kind of like splitting hairs in a way, from my perspective anyway, to what level, of minutia do we go before we, ask council to say, well, should we talk about this or just let the legislature play out? So I don't know, I'm personally torn on that, but it is kind of minor in a lot of ways, just extending the date. So go ahead, Todd, if you want to react. Then
Just real quick, I just want to remind everyone that first section is the intent. That's the intent in the bill. So we might need to revisit and make sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Two things. Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing as Todd, that if there's questions we need answered, it's best that we get them in that section 1 in the intent of the bill. And so if there are things that we're looking for on the energy code or elsewhere, we should talk with legislators about those questions so they can answer them for us. And then secondly, on the date, if we're talking about the difference between March and May to sync things up. I think that's not something that has to go before the council. If we believe that we can't do this within that general time frame, and we're saying we need to do something on a larger order of magnitude, to say, it's within the 3-year cycle or something like that, that's going to cause some real challenges with the bill. For example, in previous years, we've said we would oppose a bill if we didn't get those kind of changes. That's the sort of thing I think would have to be before the council, but agree with the previous comments that if we're talking about minor changes, we don't need to get the full council involved.
Okay. Katie?
Hi, everyone. Whoa, sorry, that's a ladle. Um, I was just gonna say, I like that it's broad. I feel like it gives us latitude to write a good code, and I think the intent is pretty clear. So I don't know. I feel like we don't want them to be too specific in what they tell us to do either. So I would just remind us of that as well. Like I think that it gives us some freedom to do what they're asking us to do. But I don't know. Maybe I'm not on the technical side enough. But I like that it's broader. And in terms of the date, I think you guys, as the legislative committee, are sort of well placed to make those decisions, just from an outside, not a council member that's not on this committee technically. It seems like that's a part of what you guys are doing is, changing it by a few months, if that's what it is, would be well within the scope of the permission that you have from my perspective.
Okay. Well, that's all good. So it's sounding to me like, Dustin, if you want to talk to the sponsor and voice your concerns, or somebody appropriate about that, and then just see what kind of reaction you get, see if there's any bit of leeway in that, or if we need to be held feet to the fire on that particular date. I don't think session will even be over by then next year, will it? It's a long session.
No, it'll be over in April next year.
Yeah, so I mean, the date itself kind of won't work with other laws. Well, I guess it may, but anyway, we have been about an hour on this, and there's plenty of other to do. So, final comments, Jay?
Yeah, just you mentioned, Tom, the bill sponsor, and the fact that this has already been through the Senate. I would suggest both are really talking to the Representative Dewar in the House, because that's where this is going next, and the work in the Senate's done. So
Yeah,
that's
good.
where we're going to get changes versus
Good.
talking to the senator that sponsored it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. No. All right, anything else on this particular item? Okay. Well, that was easy.
All right, moving through. There's been no changes on the bills we have labeled as high priority. In the medium priority bills, there's been no changes in the status here, so not going to pause on any of those. We've got a few new low priority bills added to this list, and some of them have seen some movement. The HB 1345 detached ADU limits has moved on to the House second reading now. And we didn't have any issues with this one, and didn't testify on it in the 2025 session. So not proposing we take any movement on this one. We have HB 2480, which was not on the list yesterday. I had a chance to review this one, and this one doesn't impact the SBCC, but it does impact residential development in the commercial or mixed use zones. What it will require is that counties planning underneath, I believe, RCW 70 dot, I can't remember the specific one off the top of my head, are precluded from requiring ground level commercial or mixed use in residential development in these commercial or mixed use zones. And this is aimed at making it a little bit easier to bring more residential units to bear in these mixed use zones. So this was all kind of aimed at the planning part of that in zoning. And then we have HB 2520 emergency meetings. This allows that if there was an emergent need, that agencies might choose to not go with an open public meeting to make decisions to meet the emergent need. The way this one's written, it is impacts the OPMA, but I don't see a scenario where the SBCC would want to engage with that provision and have any sort of secret meeting or secret voting. The SB 5156 elevators and smaller apartments has moved to the Senate third reading. This one has got the elevator standards in small apartment buildings. The last session we were talking about the ISO standards there and the lack of a reference to L&I in that one. And I believe this one's got some modifications in there that really bring in L&I on this one. But as it stands right now, we're not terribly concerned on this one. We get to SB 6026 residentials and development zones. This is the same as the one up here, HB 2480. It's just the companion bill. The SB 6124 doesn't impact SBCC directly, but it is directing the Department of Commerce to conduct a study assessing the feasibility of an affordability index for appliances. So planned obsolescence for like cell phones and things like that are a pain in the butt. So people are having to replace their appliances more often. It's creating more waste in landfills, and this one's aiming to create an index so that a consumer could be more informed about the appliances that they're buying. Some that might have longer lifespans, talking about repairability of these as well, and energy efficiency and some other things like that. The SBCC isn't specifically named in this one, but they are asking the Department of Commerce to engage with a stakeholder group that's identified in the bill, and a stakeholder who is experienced in Washington Building Code standards is specified. So while it doesn't call out SBCC directly, it could be anticipated that the SBCC would be contacted to get such a representative on this work group, making that assessing, working towards that feasibility study. So this one, low priority for us. And then we get into the monitoring bills. Not much change here. We have HB 2486 State Energy Code costs. This one is, asking for the State Building Code Council, when developing modifications to the energy code, to prevent cost increases when compared to previous codes, specifically the code in effect January 1 of this year. So if this were to pass, I'm not sure how it would impact our energy code adoption process for the 2024 codes, because that code does increase some cost as compared to the code in effect January 1 right now. And then it's talking with Krista on this one. It would require a little bit of a pivot in the way we are evaluating the code change proposals. It's looking more to control that first cost, construction cost, versus the life cycle cost and energy efficiencies that we're looking at. So we're looking at, you know, updating the energy code proposal form to pull that specific metric out of any life cycle evaluation so that we're not necessarily pulling it out just staff alone. And we're getting the components that we're supposed to evaluate right in front of us and don't have to manipulate it coming through. We don't anticipate that it's a non-zero staff exposure on this one, but it's considered negligible in the scheme of the whole application of this one. The probably bigger consideration on this one, which doesn't impact SBCC, but impacts the stakeholder groups that we or not represent but serve, um, it's going to allow modifications at the local level to the energy code. So if we have a code in effect, right now the local jurisdictions are required to enforce the adopted code across the state, but this will allow building officials to grant exceptions to the energy code and potentially use provisions from previous code iterations that don't increase cost. And so there's some metrics in there that talk about, you know, how much cost we're looking to prevent, but I think this one's more impactful to the local jurisdictions and the folks who might be um, applying for permits. By my view, thinking of like what this might look like, it's gonna, you know, change how people are enforcing individual permits, not all permits that come through during a time period. And then when we look at existing buildings for updates in the future, you can't say, well, this one was permitted at this time. You're going to have to look at the building documents to say, oh, well, we've granted these specific exceptions. And so this is how the building was constructed and how it complies. And it's going to be a specialized building all the way through its life. It's low impact to SBCC, but high impact to enforcement and high impact to folks who are looking to submit permits on that one. Chell.
Hey, Dustin, in your reading, so the Building Code Council often has to review local amendments. Would the Building Code Council review local amendments under this or no?
No, this would be a permit by permit kind of alternate means.
I read that totally opposite, Dustin. I read it that the building council has to, if they're granting exceptions permit to permit, then that's on them. But if they actually make amendments to the code for their jurisdiction, that we have to approve those. And that's in section 3.
I guess I would say that yes, if they're amending their code, yes. But in my reading on this one, I'm pulling it up right now so we can look at it. She said section 3.
And I'm trying to find the exact
Oh,
thing. Yeah.
there we
It's
The
go.
in
only
3 somewhere.
modification, the only modification in section 3 is the underlined sentence at the very, very bottom. But I agree with you, Tom, that number 1 would seem to cover that.
It says it very explicitly, I thought, because I read it twice and I thought, well, this has an impact.
Well, I also think, so the part that was just highlighted and the last one was 1927, which does not impact the energy code. Only 1927A impacts the energy code.
Yeah, so that's what I was just getting there to try to make sure I wasn't remembering incorrectly, is that the energy codes aren't adopted per 1927-031 and are contained in 1927A specific section. I don't have off the tip of my tongue. Chell?
Yeah, I mean, as an architect, I have concerns that every building would get a unique path through the energy code based on the jurisdiction and the particular reviewer. And I also believe it would encourage spurious cost estimates to inflate the cost of compliance to make the other things appear unreasonable, or some things in the energy code appear to be unreasonable. So I think we just that's what would be seen at the local level. And then also, whenever the local official is able to make whatever latitude that they feel like they can make, that just is, ripe for influence by those who want to, reduce the cost or increase their profit. And of course, the ultimate thing when you don't meet the energy code is you pay more in utility costs for the life of the building because you add insulation once, you add windows every, 30 years or so. You place your equipment every 20 or 30 years. So, I find the use of the word cost to be questionable in this case because it's one thing to get someone in a home, it's a different thing to keep them in the home. And a lot of the reasons people can't afford things is the utility cost. So I guess I just see lots of challenges with how this bill approaches cost and the way it kind of gives local officials huge authority to waive parts of the code, which would seem to um, which means that they're not just enforcing or not enforcing the code, that they have much more power than that, which would seem like you'd get, inflated costs so that people would say that they didn't need to do things in the energy code. And then you'd also get potential undue influence on building officials who would be pressured to allow things.
So, yes, impactful to the local jurisdictions, not so much to SBCC, unless we're asked to start approving some of those local amendments, which I'm not sure we have the authority to do in light of what's contained in this bill. Pull that off. Chell?
I'll just make a general point is that some buildings are saying, well, let's reduce the cost of the energy code. Well, if people want to reduce the cost of the energy code, they should write a bill that says we don't have to meet the 70% energy use reduction that's already in the statute. Like that's what is driving the energy code to get better each cycle. And the cost of it is, better insulation. The cost of it is better windows. The cost of it is more efficient heating equipment. And those are the costs. And if we are not to meet the 70% energy use reduction, then we would get buildings that would be cheaper first cost, higher overall energy cost, but cheaper first cost. But it seems like these bills are attempting to reduce the cost without addressing, the overall target of the state. And I guess that's really challenging to just, carve out this or that or the other thing, or say that, there's latitude here or there. Yeah, it's just really challenging the way people are trying to approach this instead of making the main argument for or against this, energy code goal. It's nibbling at this or that or the other thing to get around it, and I think it's just not clear the intent and how these things would impact everything, and then the overall goal that the state has. If jurisdictions can exempt what they want from the energy code, then how are we as a building code council to meet the 70% energy use reduction that we're supposed to meet? It just means, well, if Issaquah is not going to enforce this, then does that mean, Spokane and Seattle have to do more? It's just it's unclear if these bills pass what the intent would be as far as what we're supposed to do.
Hoyt?
Yeah, I just want to say the same thing with Shell. I just want to emphasize he's absolutely right. If they're trying to circumvent what's already been passed already by legislation, go back and change that if they want to do that. This is just causing more and more headaches, more and more work for the jurisdiction to try to stay up on these different changes that the state's doing on one side, on these enforcements for the energy code. So have them go back and change that law that was done a while ago. What was it? A certain amount of reduction of energy cost based off a certain year. And I apologize, I don't remember top of my head right now. But Sal's 100% correct. I wish they would stop doing this, and this has been going on for a while too. And now that we're getting closer to that time frame, people are starting to panic about it rather than just. We do have an energy crisis. We do have things we have to deal with. There's one we are dealing with it with the source is coming from. I mean, there's power plants and things that have been done. They're being very efficient in the federal and some of our state requirements, and we also need to make sure we keep improving the energy codes for the houses and the residentials and commercial and all that. So I wish so that's my 2 cents on that. So and thanks, Shell, for what you said. That's what I wanted to say. I agree, I'm in agreement with him. Thanks. Oh, introduce myself, Hoyt Jeter with the City of Tacoma, Principal Engineer.
Okay, thanks, Hoyt. Okay, Dustin.
Alrighty. Moving on, we have SB 6158. We talked about this one and its companion 2151. This is just bringing the international codes as a potential source for some of the standards for L&I to adopt when considering factory-built structure standards. And then we get to the other bills ones. I haven't had an opportunity to review these two in yellow or the one in white as well. But these ones, the sewage grinder pumps, we might have some intersection with the UPC. And then this AI one I'm interested in, but I haven't had a chance to really read through that and how it might help us in our or hinder us in our goals here. But with that, I'm prepared to start going over the next week's hearing schedule, if it is okay with everybody else.
Yeah, that sewage pump one just basically said that cities can't disallow their use when the dwelling is below the sewer line, and that it has to pump straight up.
Yeah.
So how that interfaces, I don't know, but
yeah, I guess there might be some regulation out there that requires them to build the building in a way that a gravity feed system can be used.
yeah.
All right, looking towards next week's hearing schedule. We don't have most of everything on this list is going to executive session, and then nothing on our high priority bill list is going to a hearing. So if we run through the stuff that is on the Friday coming up, we have all executive sessions on Friday. Coming up on Monday, we have the sewage grinder pump for new residential buildings coming up to public hearing at local government in the Senate. I don't see a need that we would need to testify on that one. We have controlling costs imposed by the state energy code. This one's coming up on Tuesday next week at 10:30 at the House Local Government Committee. Right now, we have a position of neutral and monitoring for changes there. And so this one, I think, is one that there might be some interest from us on getting to the stuff coming later on in the day. On the Tuesday, we got the concerning energy or emergency meetings. This one's OPMA. We don't need to worry about that one. Encouraging agency demographic data collection. We're not worried about that one. Getting into House Local Government on the 28th, which is the Wednesday. We have the residential development in commercial and mixed use zones, so impacting the planning, not concerned on that one. Fortifying agritourism. I'd be interested to listen into this one because right now it says that any agritourism building needs to fully comply with the building code to be used appropriately. Then we get to the 6158 on Friday, sorry. Yeah, making sure I'm not lying on the days and times there. This one's for L&I. We're not concerned on that one. And then the rest on this list are executive sessions. So I guess moving back to the energy code one that's going to hearing, that it doesn't impact our timelines, or anything like that. I don't necessarily think the council is in a position to weigh in on how that impacts our process. But I'd be curious to know the thoughts on that particular hearing.
Any comments on that?
All right. Well, with that, that concludes my presentation on the update for this week. And we have some extra time, but we have a hand up in the attendees.
Yeah, Matthew.
Hi. Thank you. Did I understand you to say that your meeting like this tomorrow, starting at 11, is all executive sessions?
No, sir. Sorry. The meeting of the council tomorrow, starting at 11, is
Yes.
open public meeting. The stuff that I'm displaying here are hearings and executive sessions of the legislature.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Todd?
I'm looking to this council's agenda tomorrow. We still have 2141 on there, and we didn't talk about that today, right? That we were
Oh,
going
no, we didn't.
to decide to take it off if it doesn't look like it's scheduled. So do we want to take it off the agenda tomorrow?
I think that was the notion we were discussing yesterday. If it wasn't
Yeah.
scheduled, that we didn't need to act.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to that? Otherwise, we'll just make the call here.
No, I'm not
Okay.
opposed.
Okay. I think that's the only other thing. Is there anything else in chair that we would want on the agenda tomorrow?
I don't think so. I mean, we already discussed the one thing, about suggesting, some leniency in the time on that one, but I don't know that anything from here, at least at this point, rises to the level of council discussion, unless anybody else does.
Okay.
I
And
don't
then
see anything, so.
if I may, then on our committee reports, I think we obviously don't think we need to go through all of these like these meetings. We would just maybe ask you as the chair to update the full council that we have these meetings.
Okay.
Does anyone want to see any more content in the full council meeting than that?
Jay?
I do think that there might be just general interest in knowing the embodied carbon bill is out there and moving, and that scissor stairs is another impactful one that's moving, but just as a report, not requiring any action.
Okay. Go ahead, Ted.
I had heard that, was there a recommendation on this? Did the scissor stair bill have an amendment? Or was that not official?
I haven't seen one come across just yet. But it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I just haven't had a chance to check on all that.
Okay.
Has there been any notion on, the two different embodied carbon bills? One's the legacy one from last year, whether that's going to be pulled. It didn't get substituted, which is interesting, but is it just going to be left there to die, do you think, Todd or Jay or whoever?
Yeah, my understanding is the House can't modify a bill title, and so that's why you've got the second one, because they wanted to change the bill title and they couldn't do that with a substitute.
Gotcha. Okay, so that one will just probably fall off the earth at the end of session, then the other one, the old one. Angela?
Yeah, Riptor indicated that it was a replacement.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Other business?
Not for me.
All right. Well, looks like you're gonna be able to get to doing your chores early today. Unless anybody has anything else, we'll adjourn, and I see most of you all tomorrow.
Thanks everybody for the time.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks,
See ya.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.